So this might have actually made the news for a lot of our listeners. The idea here is that the US is now setting up this voluntary agreement with Anthropic and OpenAI primarily, but sort of any frontier lab, where 30 days before planned release, they strongly encourage labs to let the US government have access to these models in order to be able to sanity check and evaluate how capable these models are, especially on their
is this like when
cyber
you have an
capabilities.
AR-15 and you're like, hey man, I would really like if you walk over there and get me an ice cream.
That's kind of what
I'd
it sounds
really
like.
like
That's
it.
kind of what it sounds like. And so here, this is the crazy bit that I think people aren't talking about enough. So I read this executive order. It's not that long. And who are the people in charge of maintaining this benchmark to assess cyber capabilities of AI models? It is the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of War, Secretary of Homeland Security, the White House Chief of Staff, and the Secretary of Commerce, through sort of like these delegated officials within each of these. So at the Secretary of War, it is through the Director of the NSA. At the Secretary of Homeland Security, it's through the Director of the CISA.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So there's like these head honchos at each of these departments that are in charge of helping set up a benchmark to assess the cyber capabilities of these AI models.
And these people are ostensibly overseeing slightly more technical departments. Like the NSA is more technical leading than the whole Pentagon.
Yeah, exactly.
Or like, the cybersecurity arm of like the Treasury is probably more tech leaning than the whole Treasury.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so the Secretary of Commerce is involved because turns out the National Institute of Standards Technology is part of the Secretary of Commerce. That's right. So, but anyway, there's a lot of people involved now that are all involved in setting up this benchmark to assess cyber capabilities of AI models, which is just like so funny to me, that it feels like we're just really throwing everything at the wall and being like, hey, well, who can come up with the benchmark to assess these models? Can you do it, Secretary of Treasury? Can you do it, Secretary of War?
Do we have any idea what that means? Because I think benchmark in the conventional sense that we were talking about 10 minutes ago, which is like you're creating challenges, puzzles for agents to like go out and solve. I have a hunch Scott Bessent's undersecretary is not like thinking through programmatic challenges for these models, right? Or are they?
So I would love to talk to someone who actually works on this, like in their daily life. Like who are these engineers working on creating these benchmarks? For the UK government, AC, we know who those folks are. It is really hard to get any sort of glimmer of understanding or insight into who the engineers are that are actually working on these benchmarking, right? And the interesting thing is that unlike AC, they're keeping these benchmarks super secretive. I don't think they ever plan to release what these are. The US really sees these models and their benchmarking as military capable tools. And I don't think that they will ever release publicly or disclose the capability of these systems or how they maintain them internally or how they benchmark them internally. Like these are all things that are really sort of like not in the public sphere. And it's weird, man. It's like we're getting like this like 3-part regime where it's like there are 3 different ways to benchmark models: on open source benchmarks like Terminal Bench, internally, whatever Anthropic and OpenAI is doing, and then the US government's benchmarking. And these are kind of like 3 different ways of benchmarking the systems. The only thing we can ever really look at is the public ones, right? And we don't know if we really trust the public ones all that much.
Well, and hasn't this just been the evolution of AI as a whole? Like, if we look at the patterns, it started off as an academic discipline.
Yeah.
Everything was open.
Yeah.
Published papers. It became very corporate with frontier labs either not releasing their weights or releasing the weights, but not the training regimes and not publishing papers to tell us how they did it. And now we're having like the final frontier, which is the US government, maybe eventually saying, you actually can't release these models at all. We're only going to use them internally for cybersecurity purposes.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. I mean, it's such a crazy evolution. I think I've been trying to think a lot about, are there any parallels to this? I mean, could for instance, like the discovery of gunpowder or the discovery of oil be seen as akin to this in any sense? And it's hard to come up with a really good parallel or a really good analogy for this. I think we're really setting a brand new precedent for a new type of resource that has kind of emerged out of thin air. And for how we regulate that. How do we regulate the dual use nature of these things where we're seeing them being implemented in war in real time now? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with AI drones really making it onto the battlefield in Ukraine, and also with the absolute just domination of these tools in the commercial sphere, right? How do you regulate these things? It's so hard given that the underlying model is the same, right? It's not like you pre-train a model just for military use and you pre-train a model just for commercial use. It's literally the exact same model. It's the exact same engine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like what kind of car you plug that into, right? Like the chassis that you plug that into, that makes this difference. And so we'll have to see, man.
Do you think we've reached the threshold where every Frontier model from this point going forward is both going to have this US government review and also maybe is not going to be released in the public domain? Like, do you think we've saturated the intelligence level that the US government and worldwide governments feel safe in giving to the regular population, not just keeping either for themselves or a limited list of trusted parties?
So I think coming back to this, car analogy, I think that companies will always release a version of their model of their engine and they'll put it in like a little Toyota Prius for us to play around with, or a little Fiat 500, And you and me and, normal people, normies, will always have access to a model, but in like a really bad kind of like surrounding frame, all right? That I don't think is going anywhere. I think the thing that we're seeing now is that the US government will want to regulate this framework. They'll want to say, hey, you can only ever put this engine in this really simple car, and we're going to regulate the extent to which you can put that into like a sports car, right? Like already we say, hey, like cars can't have engines that are more noise polluting or polluting than this, right? This is kind
But
of
like tanks, on the other hand, can do whatever they want.
yeah, tanks can do whatever
Yeah.
they want, right? Exactly. So the U.S. government might say, hey, well, you can put this sort of like this technology, this engine, in these really simple chassis in these simple cars. We're the only ones that can put it in, the tanks or in the sport cars or in the, for these like really powerful use cases. And I think I would bet that this is the sort of regulation and sort of like legislation route that we're going to go down, where the government will say we're going to regulate the harnesses much more than the models.
Mm.